I'm back at Besthorpe gravel pits today. This is the Nottinghamshire Wildlife Trust's Besthorpe Nature Reserve, and this opening shot may well be one that you see a lot of in the coming years. It's a beautiful place. I'm able to lock the barrier a good quarter of a mile away behind me, have the place to myself. Well, there is a road here in the field over to your right, but it's too distant to even attempt to film. But good conditions for potential migrants to reach the east coast of the UK tonight and in the next couple of nights. A long stretch of easterly winds from way into Eastern Europe, and some frontal systems pushing up and bringing rather wet and thundery weather to southern parts could mean that there's good numbers of migrant moths around. What I need to decide is where I'm going to set up to potentially intercept any migrants that happen to make it to Besthorpe. I always like the start of any trapping session, especially filling out the book. Hopefully this might get quite full. Well, this page at least. Hopefully better than that. And that was missing car. Last night's trapping area. But when you initially put all your details down, I'll just put the date, the weather conditions, whether it's clear, mild, warm, rainy, wet, and then the temperature at the start of the trapping session, and also the temperature at the end of the trapping session, and of course the start and end times of the trapping session. Always full of anticipation. And I've decided to trap against the gate again. I may well be pestered by a bit of a nagging northeasterly breeze, but if it brings in some moths, I don't really care. Time to start the generator. Well, a nice looking sky at the back of the gate, and the sheet lit up by the trusty MV bulb. They do last a long time, he says, touching wood. And just in case you're wondering about the generator, I always have the generator sat on top of a shallow tray, just to avoid the off chance of anything going wrong with the generator and perhaps a spillage or a leakage. Always make sure you site your generator on something such as a tray. And as the geese start to descend in to roost, we await the first moth here at Besthorpe. Well, an hour gone, and what a quiet hour it's been. I know there's a little bit of a breeze, but there seems to be just very few moths flying. I've got 12 moths of 8 species. That's all. It can't get any worse, and I am surprised, I must admit. I thought that there would be more moths both tonight and last night, but it seems not. So we'll play it by ear. First hour very, very quiet. Maybe some more stuff will start to come in. It should do in this next hour, but nothing of any interest or note, to be honest, at all. So let's hope for better things. Well, with having so few moths, it's a struggle to find anything to show you, but this has not long since come in. This is a small blood vein, and a beautifully marked one as well. This looks absolutely pristine. Very different, apart from the shape of the wings. That sort of outline of both forewings and hind wings is reminiscent of blood vein, but apart from that, as far as I'm concerned, there's not a great deal in the terms of similarity. But it's a very attractive species, and this is quite unusual because it's one of those species that rarely ever settles down at light. Sometimes when they've been flapping and flying around for an hour, then you can get them like this to perch up. And that's about as good as it's got at the moment in terms of being able to show you anything. But a very attractive moth nonetheless, in the form of small blood vein. "2 hours gone already. Rather mothless hours. I am quite surprised actually. I thought it would be better than it was at Missing Car last night, but not at the moment. However, I just have one of those sneaky feelings that something could all of a sudden awaken the place with its rarity. I don't know. Sometimes you think something's going to come in and nothing does, but it's very quiet, and from what I can see there's very few moths flying around, and the only species that I've had in since I last spoke was single rosy rustic and single common wainscot. Not brilliant, I know, unless you've never seen rosy rustic and common wainscot before, then you'd be absolutely ecstatic. But the only other moth of note, thinking about it now, is a single white point. Amazing how white point has changed its status after arriving in Nottinghamshire a few years ago. And I think I've had 9, I think it is already, this month alone. Quite incredible. One of the good things about this hobby is that the status of many moths changes, especially those always regarded as real rarities, especially inland. Now they're becoming common and regular. What's next, we all wonder. I think most people, in Nottinghamshire at least, thinking along the lines of Clancy's rustic. But who knows? You just never know. It's such an unpredictable hobby. But at the moment, even common species are something of a rarity. I've mentioned a lot over the last couple of trapping sessions about those colourful autumn moths that make trapping in the autumn worthwhile. Well, here's one of those colourful moths. This is a barred sallow. It's a moth fairly regular at many traps, especially if you trap in woodland, but it will occur in gardens too. So this is not out of anybody's reach really. A fabulous moth, and certainly one of those moths that refute the reputation amongst many members of the public that our UK moths are all dull and brown affairs. Far from it. The UK has some fabulously coloured moths, and this is just one of them. This is barred sallow, a nice splash of colour to this Besthorpe night. And that's how quiet it is for moths. Just the one moth on the sheet just at the back of the light, and that's a barred sallow. Everything else is dipterous and caddisflies. Just had a brown spot pinion come in, another female. I had a female here a couple of weeks ago, and that's been the first moth of any kind which has come in for probably about half an hour or maybe more. Soon be at the end of 3 hours, and then it'll be decision time. Do I stay longer to see if anything comes in, or do I pack up and head home? Temperature's not a factor for the lack of moths. It's still 15 centigrade, and although there's a bit of a breeze, it's not a cool breeze. But we'll see what happens in the next quarter of an hour. Well, there's no change. Nothing has come in apart from one cetaceous Hebrew character. And when after 3¼ hours you know it looks like this, you're either trapping in winter in an urban area, or it's incredibly poor. And it is incredibly poor. There's nothing flying. I'm not seeing moths flying over the light or by the light. So I'm going to give it another quarter of an hour just to see if anything does suddenly spark up, but I can't see it, to be honest. There's been nothing in the 3¼ hours to suggest that something will happen. Unfortunately, it's how it works out sometimes. Sometimes you can start running the trap and not expect anything to happen, and all of a sudden it does. So another quarter of an hour. I may well start and pack a few things away now, but very disappointing. Well, I thought I'd show this just to add a little bit of colour. This, of course, is a light emerald. There are 3 in now. There's a few moths starting to come into the light, but it's still generally very quiet. But I thought I'd show you this just to add a bit of colour and show you that there are at least some moths, despite it being disappointing so far. But a very attractive moth. Light emerald's absolutely beautiful. A lovely light sage green, flies in 2 broods, and you will get this in your garden trap pretty much wherever you trap, even in the middle of a large city. This will inevitably turn up at some time. So this is light emerald, one of 3 in at the moment. Well, it's just gone 22:45, so 3¼ hours have come and gone, but not much has come and gone in that 3¼ hours. Since I last filmed a piece to camera, I've had 1 Cetaceous Hebrew character come in, and that's it. Not even anything flying around that I can see, nothing sort of landing nearby and working its way through the grass. Very, very quiet, and I am quite surprised. I didn't expect lots of moths, but I thought there would be more than what's in my notebook here. And if your notebook looks like this, either your light's not been switched on, or you've had a very poor night. So my plan of action is to give it till 11 o'clock. I may well start and pack a few bits up, just in the hope that something may suddenly come out of the darkness and hit the sheet. But I think we'll probably be hitting the road just after 11 o'clock. Very disappointing, but there just doesn't seem to be the moths around at the moment.